It's the Montessori Power Hour. I'm David Hargis.
And I'm Aubrey Hargis. This just in from the Surgeon General. Parenting might be hazardous for your health. I wonder if this is news to you that parenting is stressful. Well, in today's Montessori Power Hour, we are going to share our Montessori inspired thoughts from that perspective. Plus, we're going to play a new game, pick a card from our beautiful new Montessori planning cards. David, I'm sure, has a joke for us
Not
later
me,
on.
but maybe Rabbit.
Maybe Rabbit. Maybe Rabbit has a joke for us later on.
Could be.
And then we're going to wrap up with a book review about a book that is just perfect if you are celebrating with us the bounty of the autumn season.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, first off, though, you mentioned that Surgeon General's warning. I don't know how many of you saw that. I know that Surgeon General warnings are not usually front page news, although perhaps they should be. But essentially, the Surgeon General of the U.S., Dr. Vivek Murthy, he issued an advisory saying that, in essence, parenting is stressful. And,
I mean, it does sound pretty simple, but I mean, he takes it further than that, right?
Yeah,
he says, like, it's not just that it's stressful, it's like unnecessarily
yeah, that's
stressful,
essentially
right?
modern parenting actually is a lot harder, and as is being a child. And he talks about a variety of causes of that, but I thought, we see this every now and again bubble up about, like, are you parenting too hard or too little or too much or too little? But so I thought it was interesting. He also talks about it sort of in the systemic ways. But I know we brought some, in case you haven't heard the story yet, we did bring a article. Do you want to walk us through, or should I? Or?
Yeah, let's do this. So first off, the title is Surgeon General warns parents are facing dangerous levels of stress. And this makes my heart pound just reading the title, the words dangerous, like this stressful parenting style or whatever you have it in the modern life. Like it's not just, I don't know, it's not just like making us kind of stressed, but it's like danger to our health.
That's right.
And so that makes me think immediately of like, are we facing more heart attacks or, I don't know, other terrible illnesses? What else arises from stress? Hypertension cancer and all kinds of...
Yeah, every health, diabetes can be linked
They're
to
all like
that.
linked to back to obesity. Like they're all like linked back to high amounts of stress in some way.
That's right.
But maybe there are some things we can do about this from the Montessori perspective, I think we would argue. But let's just go ahead and kind of read through a little bit of this article and we'll
Now,
take it
this
apart.
article, this has been published around a few places. This one comes from The Hill.
Right.
So if you're wanting to read the same article.
Written by Lauren Irwin.
But it's been reported at a few places. And if you've read any of those out in the chat, hello, we see all you guys. Thanks for joining us. Pop on in. So what is the news?
This says, the U.S. Surgeon General is warning that parenting can be harmful for your mental health because mothers and fathers face dangerous levels of stress, right? And I think the implication is, yes, mental health, stressful, so what? But we know that mental health is connected in no uncertain terms to physical health, right?
Sure.
So we can kind of imply that. It says, in an advisory issued Wednesday, Dr. Vivek Murthy said he is blessed to be a father of two, but he noted how difficult he finds parenting for himself and others. Being a dad is both the, quote, toughest and most rewarding job he's ever had, Murthy said. And here's another quote. He says, the stresses that parents and caregivers have today are being passed to children in direct and indirect ways, impacting families and communities across America, he said. I would argue that, he's speaking for Americans.
The U.S. Surgeon General, but
I mean, obviously, given that we have a global community and we notice parents in our community coming in with high amounts of stress because, just related to parenting itself, I think that we can say that, like, this is more of a global issue than just a U.S.
As
issue.
the great Blur once taught us.
What did
Modern life is rubbish. So
all those Blur fans out there are cheering for you right now.
That's right.
I would never have remembered that quote from Blur. So, but the thing that calls out to me here is that the way this article is written actually makes me more worried because, yeah, I know I'm stressed out as a parent. I've got a lot of things on my mind. I don't just have work to do. Even when I was a stay-at-home parent alone without earning an income, it was stressful.
Well, not earning an income was stressful.
Yeah, not earning an income was stressful. Yeah, absolutely. I will never regret the choice that I made to stay home with our kids. I actually fought for it, in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Like I really, we did our best to make sure that it happened. I really wanted our children to grow up with their early childhood in our home. And it's not to disparage any other ways of, caring for children. There are certainly great caregivers out there in other situations, but I personally really wanted to stay home with.
And I want to
kids.
underline this because I think I think this is one of the. We'll go back to this in a second, but I think it actually speaks to because one of his points is about unpaid labor and so forth. And so when we were married, first married, could not fathom that you would not continue to work.
Yeah.
After we had children, and because my mother worked, and I was raised with this idea of women working outside the home.
Your mom didn't just work. Your mom went right back to work just a couple weeks after your birth, which she recorded in your little birth book that was passed on to us, and it just shocked me that she had to go back to work so quickly after you were born. And so a lot of the decisions that she had to make for your care were based on the fact that she had to go back to work so quickly.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so I just expected it as the norm, like in a fair and equal society. Then, why would the woman, the mother, the female, whatever, stay home with the baby while the man went off like 1950s Beaver style? It was just like completely. I thought you were like some kind of crazy anti-feminist. Like, what's going on here?
I know. He thought I was a feminist, and then I said I wanted to stay home, and he was like, "Wait a minute, I thought you were a feminist." I feel like often women, especially after they give birth, aren't given proper time to, heal back their bodies after such a traumatic physical event.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth paying for. And so we did everything that we could to make it happen. And it did mean that we had to scrimp a lot, that we didn't have a lot of money for the kind of fancy Montessori material supplies that we see a lot of parents able to afford, which is great if you can, but we didn't. And so we did take a big DIY approach. But it wasn't unstressful. And part of that was financial stress. And another part of it was the stress that was kind of thrust upon us, like the stress of, it seemed like as soon as our baby was born, we were given all this stress to like educate them with, like, can you, I don't know, like enroll your baby in these classes? Like the classes seemed to start right away, or the pressure to enroll our kids in these classes started to be right away. And there were some things that we just flat out could not afford because we had a single income and because you had just left graduate school to transition your career. And so we literally did not have that money, and so we had to do without. And so that really caused us, I think, in some good ways, to get real scrappy and hands-on with things, and to learn that taking a more simple approach to life and a more relaxed approach to life is in a lot of ways better for kids anyway.
Totally. I mean,
I think we both learned kids actually don't need as much. I had grown up in Montessori circles where I had the idea that our kids would attend a Montessori school just as a given. And then we chose to make a different decision for our family because we had another baby at the time and because of financial reasons with Montessori private schools, just private schools costing so much, that we really learned like, oh, like children actually don't need as much fussing as you think. And interesting thing is that Maria Montessori knew this too.
Yeah.
When she observed children in Rome who were impoverished and had less access to resources, she noticed that just like more toys and more stuff didn't make them happier.
Yeah, I mean, she has that famous quote about, what is it, even pampered children deserve our
That's right. She's
sympathy.
Essentially, even pampered children benefit from the Montessori approach. She really saw the difference between children
and that was not because she thought pampered children already had such a opportunity, but rather she was like, they have an enormous challenge.
They have an enormous challenge because they don't feel grateful for the simple things in life.
That's right.
Because they have too much stuff. You know, there's too many choices. There's too many experiences. And I think even modern Montessori teachers often will say that they can see the same thing when they teach different populations of children. I have personally worked with children who were much, much more resourced and children who were very under-resourced.
Yep.
And I can tell you there is a big difference in both the parents and in the children in terms of their appreciation for simplicity or even for people and for objects.
Yep.
And so David and I have worked really, really hard actually as we did become more financially abundant as our kids got older and I was able to return to a different kind of work but start drawing in an income. We actually have worked on the opposite. We recognized during those scrappy years how beneficial it was to our children to have a more simple kind of natural life that really led you to appreciate when you did receive things. We had to work kind of against it in a privileged way. Mm-hmm. We were like, actually, like, we want to make sure that our children grow up grateful for the things in life and that they're not just handed things to them. And so we actually have had to talk to grandparents about not giving our children too much too soon, you know, and trying to delay some of the big things for later, or actually just letting our kids, you know, instead of just expressing their wants and wishes, you know, gifting it to them if we're financially able to, but saying, you know what, let's wait, you know, let's let some of that desire build, and maybe, you know, then the rewards will be sweeter when they do come, you know, and that has been hard, you know, so that's a part of the Montessori parenting lifestyle that parents can choose, and that parents who are under-resourced, you know, obviously don't necessarily have the privilege to choose that kind of lifestyle. So obviously it's not like there's all the benefits for under-resourced kids. There are not. But Maria Montessori definitely noticed like a difference in the behavior of children between children who have too much and too many experiences and children who maybe haven't had an abundant, like a perfect abundance.
Yeah, we're not talking about the basic needs were not met. We're talking about this kind of overabundance. And
and we had that conversation recently too. Is like on the subject of like money doesn't make you happier. Just for those of you who are out there experiencing that, they realize there is
here.
Or in here. There is a threshold.
Those abundance years are over for us.
I know. One can always hope, right?
Yes.
But there is a threshold of financial abundance that leads people to feel like less stressed and
but
happier.
But there's a point after that.
And there's a point after that where you actually get unhappier, and there are negative results as a result of your financial abundance.
So going back to this article, I think what Dr. Murthy is pointing out, and as you'll read on, is that this is not just a abstract concept.
Right.
There's actually, he's saying there are real consequences to the adults and the child as a result of this stress that's coming from all this sort of expectation and so forth. So he writes, he says that 41% of parents say they are so stressed most days they can't function, and 48% say their stress is completely overwhelming compared to other adults.
Those are huge numbers.
Yes, 50-50, right? Murty argues that parents today are facing different challenges from older generations, including social media, of course, an increasing youth mental health crisis, definitely seeing that, and the epidemic of loneliness that impacts younger people and their parents. And one of the things that we talk about sometimes is the idea that the third space is going away.
Yeah.
And where do kids and adults have to go that isn't work or home? Earlier this year, Murty pushed to require social media to have labels for its mental health impacts on young Americans. Quote, in my conversations with parents and caregivers across America, I have found guilt and shame have become pervasive, often leading them to hide their struggles, which perpetuates a vicious cycle where stress leads to guilt, which leads to more stress, he said.
Right.
Murty argued parents should be supported via policy changes and community programs, including time off for work to care for a sick child or affordable child care and mental health resources.
Right.
He also said the cultural norms around parenting need to change to support parents.
Right.
The work of raising a child, quote, the work of raising a child is work, no less valuable than the work performed in a paid job and of extraordinary value when it comes to the impact of the future society, Murty said. Cultural norms should support parents talking more openly about their challenges, kind of what we're trying to do here, right?
Absolutely.
And support for them when they do face them, he said. Quote, raising children is sacred work. It should matter to all of us, Murty said. And the health and well-being of those who are caring for our children should matter to us as well. Okay,
Right.
So he, in his longer statement and in some of the think pieces and so forth that I've read otherwise, there's more dialogue around this, but I mean, he's putting his finger on something real, which we were just talking about, like this overwhelming crush of information and expectation, some kind of a standard that we're supposed to try and achieve. And it goes back to that anecdote I was saying about, like, I couldn't imagine you, like, why wouldn't you want to work? And kind of it took time for me to, like, come around to, like, actually, if you really want to support a person, you know, man or woman's choice, like that choice can be different than your own.
Yeah.
And so, like, part of it's kind of I know it's not exactly there's a train of thought that says that true feminism is also the ability to choose to be a full-time parent as much as it is to work outside the home. And that's a challenging idea for some because we've worked so hard for equality in the workplace, but to your own personal life experience and ours as a family, like, that was what I saw. Like,
And it's the same for stay-at-home dads.
totally. Like, yes, exactly.
Are also out there.
Yeah, that's like the choice, like true actual freedom and independence would be the ability to choose the life that's right for you, whether or not it conforms to a social norm one way or the other. And as another great poet, Bob Dylan, once said, I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now. Does everybody know Bob Dylan, right? So
everybody knows Bob Dylan, I'm sure. Okay. So so here's back to the part that is of concern. So first of all, we see a lot of feelings of guilt and shame and concern about not doing enough in our community, in our global community at Child of the Redwoods, in our private community. It comes up all the time, and it also influences how people use curriculum. It is always kind of a balance for us to, because our job right now is to provide fun lessons, to help members make connections between, like, the foundational content, which is like those classic Montessori lessons that Maria Montessori prescribed for us that still have full value and drive our curriculum today, and also help them to realize that these lessons, like, when it really comes down to being with children and how children grow up, giving them, offering the world to them doesn't necessarily mean that you need to offer every single experience that a person could possibly have. I remember as a parent of young children thinking, like, constantly, like, are they learning enough about space and earth science
Yeah.
and we haven't done enough social studies type of activities in a while, and I've missed those things, and I kind of internalized them. I tended to internalize them as being my fault.
Yeah.
It's my fault that my kids never got to take, I don't know, I was going to say ballet, which would be non-traditional for boys, but also super cool. I've been thinking actually of tap. Like our youngest wanted to take tap dancing
That's
classes at one time. I just couldn't find a class for him during the time, or make it work. And then I felt bad. We even bought him tap shoes. Right?
I love Gene Kelly.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this would be awesome. We'll have the next generation of Gene Kellys could be in my home.
I know. And then we just couldn't make it work. But and that's just one example of something that like I just want to give my kids everything in the world that their little heart beats for. And I feel personally on my shoulders like it's my fault when they're not good at things or when they're not interested in things. And so it's not particular to the Montessori method. It's just like modern parenting puts it all on parents. It really is difficult to deal with that kind of stress. And
Totally.
here, we know that this stress is impacting us. And I think that it's really hard to hear the stresses parents and caregivers have today are being passed to children in indirect and in direct ways, And
Yeah.
I know that like there have been times in our parenting journey where I have been unbelievably stressed and trying to keep things together for the kids, and just like the knowledge that they've been impacted by my stress brings me more guilt, which he says is the vicious cycle.
This is the vicious cycle, right?
This is the vicious cycle.
Well, what I love at the end, how the article is written, is that he ends with a call that I think is hyper important, and we really, my sense is that we do not really appreciate in society, and that is there is no society without families. Like, it is the underlying thing if you go back through all of time.
Yeah.
And so the family, children, raising children to be healthy, making sure they feel like they have an opportunity in society, equipping them with the best, all the children in the society, like that is perhaps your most sacred, as he says, sacred duty as a society. And I think he's right. Like part of what he's saying is that there's a lot going on, but I think he's pointing also that there's a lot of institutional or structural social things that we do that make it harder, that add to that stress. And one of those would be that we just do not hold the role of the family or the parent and child, or
Yes.
the child in the same regard, that there are lots of places where children are not allowed to go, where we think of like life sort of diverges once you have a child and like you're on a very different world. There's just all kinds of ways that we explain this kind of or articulate this, and it's not only harmful to the parent, it's more broadly harmful to your whole community and society, where you are working together. It's a generational project to make the world peaceful and loving. Like, it's not something you will do in your lifetime. You have to work that into your children and have them work that into their children.
Well, there are, fortunately, the golden light at the end of the tunnel is that choosing to parent the authentic, genuine Montessori way, and in fact, what we, choosing to homeschool as well, these can be acts of resistance against this.
Totally.
Yes, I mean, they don't have to be. You can take the Montessori curriculum and then just add it to your to-do list. But what is the fun in that? Right? So what we're trying to do is relax into trusting the child, following the child, offering experiences, knowing that all experiences connect intimately with each other. And there's no one subject area that you miss. If you're teaching your child something, there's going to be opportunities for teaching your child other things. And the key to making it all work is to chill out a bit, right?
Yeah.
Lean into that more simple lifestyle. And if you feel stressed by not having enough, maybe look around at what you have and maybe do some decluttering, as an act of resistance against that feeling of not having enoughness. Try doing without a little even more. Try DIYing some Montessori materials for fun and pleasure, not just because you feel like it's something that your child will miss out on if you don't do it.
Yeah, and be confident in who you are and your choices. It's okay.
Absolutely.
You're not going to break the
We've
child.
got so many members in our community modeling this right now.
Yeah.
And so if you have those feelings of doubt and insecurity, we have a beautiful community with lots of people who are showing up with that exact kind of resistance mentality against the cultural stress of modern parenting that is going on.
Totally.
Well, we have a new fun segment today to share with you. We are going to play a game with our Montessori planning cards. We're actually going to pick a card at random.
Pick a card, any card.
And this is going to be a little, I'm a little bit nervous about this because I don't know what will happen when we do it. But we're going to pick a card at random, read whatever the title is of the card, and then we're going to find that lesson inside our foundational materials and talk about whatever that lesson is. And we'll see if we can make some of those connections and do a little bit of that modeling on the spot.
Yep.
Okay.
And if you don't know what the cards are, just a quick summary. We've taken the whole primary and lower elementary curriculum and we've organized it across these cards and broken it into levels. Each card has a set of lessons that go with a common topic. And the idea is that if you teach those lessons, then you'll be teaching to that broader concept. And then that broader concept then leads to the academic area or subject area like sensorial. And it's a way to plan and have fun and track and observe and so forth. And we are going to see what happens. Now, how are we going to do this?
Okay.
We hadn't quite
decided.
settled on
So
this.
I'm thinking, I'm thinking, So I'm thinking you're just going to close your eyes.
Okay.
And you're just going to just like, and pull one out. Okay? And we'll each do it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Are you ready? And so hopefully, like, maybe you shoot for one towards the beginning of the stack and I'll shoot for one toward the back of the stack.
Okay.
Okay. Are you
I am.
Are you ready?
Okay, play along at home, folks. Here we go.
Here we go.
And
Beginning of the stack.
Okay,
random.
Right here. This one.
Okay, pull it out.
Ooh.
Oh, you got a practical life card,
Yeah.
a grace and courtesy card. This will be fun.
Grace and courtesy, which is within practical life, the domain of community care.
It is actually something we have been talking about in our Montessori primary course. These
And
days.
I see that we have, 4, 8, 9 lessons to cover. Now, of course, we don't have to talk about all of those, but, to be clear on how you would use the card, you would not have to do all 9 lessons before you were done. You would choose one lesson that week from this card and 3 other cards, and that would be your lesson planning. So you give a diverse academic experience. So we'll pick a couple from these, but for first, I think you need to pick your own card.
Here I go. All right, and I'm kind of choosing one from the back of the stack-ish, right?
Picking a
I have
card.
no idea what this is. Oh, this is art.
It is art. Now,
Well,
this
that's
is
a fun combination.
Oh,
We just
yes.
talked about practical life and art in our primary course, so that works really well.
Yeah, so this is art. This is a level 1, so it's the introductory level, and this is a level 2. The cards go all the way through level 6, so levels 1, 2, and 3 are for primary. 4, 5, and 6 are for lower elementary.
Do you want to switch to the top down to kind of show those cards? And then I will be looking. I'm going to go grab the practical life and the art.
Yeah, so these are the way that we would encourage you to use the cards. If you are using them at home and you're in one of our programs, Complete or Unlimited, includes these cards. You would pick 4 cards for the week, plus the constellation card for that week. This is week 3 for Constellation and Bounty, so you'd have your constellation card and you'd pick the 4 other Montessori Foundations cards. And you would pick the level based on where your child is at. So you might have a mix, right? So your child might be in level 2 in this practical life and in level 1 in art. That's completely reasonable. because children are complex and human brains grow at different rates.
Yeah.
So
We often, just to say that in our theme cards, as these are the cards for Bounty, we pull from these foundational lessons and then expand them into scripted, illustrated lessons that go with our theme.
That's
and
right.
so members who join, you do not have to do all of these activities every single month plus all of these activities.
Yep.
They interrelate within each other, and just trusting the child, trusting that if you model these lessons regularly, things will kind of come together. I think that it's a very approachable system
Yep.
for parents who are experienced at Montessori or brand
That's
new.
right. The truth is that if you went through a year of constellation themes,
You're going
and
to cover a
you're going to
lot
cover
of
the
these.
foundational, but we also make it now with these new cards, the new card system, easy to see where those are. Okay,
Yeah.
so we have, like I said, practical life. This is week 3. We're doing some fun activities. One on measuring an apple.
Ooh, yes.
One where you sprout a pinto bean. I wanted to show that one off because you had sprouted quite a gigantic bean, but I guess
know.
I think it's gone to the compost bin in the
It
sky.
has gone to the compost.
And a
bin.
4-card part on beans. Okay, so now let's talk about the foundations, though. We have the art, which for us is the domain. The 2 domains are visual art and musical art under the subject area of the arts.
Okay.
And then under practical life, we have community care, self-care, and oh no, you remember what the third?
And what?
Household care.
Household care. Yeah.
Yeah, self, household, and community care. So you can see like getting larger and larger. This is going to be from community care. Okay, so I'll read these lessons off. These will all be level 2 lessons for grace and courtesy. So that's observing, not interrupting, getting someone's attention, expressing gratitude.
Ooh. Did we not just talk about gratitude earlier?
That's right.
It is a skill your child can learn.
Waiting in line, asking questions, offering assistance, declining assistance. I'm thinking of our oldest right now. Taking turns and using the peace table. So again, so this is a level 2, which meaning there's a level 1 card that would have predecessor skills or lessons that presumably you've already done. So what do you see here? What kinds of what's this card about?
Well, this card is about grace and courtesy, which is essentially what we call polite manners in society, like learning social cues and how to navigate social situations is really grace and courtesy. So it could be anything from learning how to greet someone and say hi or say hello, to make new friends, to conflict resolution, like it says, using the peace table.
And this was one of Montessori's earliest. Like she focused on grace and courtesy really from the outset, right?
Yeah.
And all the stories of the children coming in and washing their hands.
Yeah, now part of this was because she was working with children who were under-resourced, underprivileged in a community that was really looked down upon by the elite society that surrounded them. They were thought of as dirty and unmannered. I mean, I think the poorer classes have always are
for sure
thought of as being like unclean and unfit for society and uncouth and rude, right? And so Maria Montessori noticed that people had this perception of these children, and she went in, and she wasn't of the highest class, but she definitely wasn't.
No, she was like middle class. Her dad was like
I mean, she went to college,
yeah,
and
she was.
I think she was upper middle class, right?
Yeah.
So she worked with a lot of wealthy benefactors who wanted to help these poor, uncivilized children, right? And uncivilized is in quotes. And so she looked at these children, and I think that she always kind of had it in her heart that, like, these are just children. They're not necessarily, there's nothing wrong. They're just poor. And so she started to teach them the kind of manners that one would perhaps perhaps have learned in a different, more privileged situation. And so these children really went. We actually had an experience recently where we were caring for a group of kids that was just like going bananas. And I was thinking about Maria Montessori. It was like, oh wow, like back in the original Casa Bambini when she came in,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, those children were like filthy, running around without any kind of
totally.
there was no organization. They were just like at random, probably jumping over all kinds of dangerous equipment, and there was like no place for them to play. And it was like a crazy situation that she was introduced into, and the elite parents, who were donating to help this poor community, they were like, oh my goodness, it's chaos in there. This is devastating the way these people are living. And so Maria Montessori did go in hoping to make a positive difference. But also the gift that she really gave these children was the gift of respect.
That's right.
And she learned that through grace and courtesy lessons that these are like nobody had taught them how to blow their nose without like making a giant mess all over the place, and which people would think of as gross, right? And so when she showed them how to blow one's nose politely and discreetly in public, and how to quietly get somebody's attention rather than screaming at them, like these children recognized it as a big gift. Like they responded to her with even more gratitude and more respect. They were just so grateful that finally somebody was not just throwing toys at them
or dirt,
right? Or dirt at them, right?
Yeah,
somebody was finally like giving them like actual
treating them like human
respect,
people of value.
Yes.
That's
and
right.
So I think that our comment earlier about how Maria's comments about the pampered children benefit from the Montessori approach.
They've all learned how to use the salad fork.
Yes, they've all learned how to use the salad fork. They were all brought up to politely shake one's hand while wearing little fancy trousers and a little bow tie. But they still benefit from having these
Even they
lessons,
can be taught.
Right, even they can be taught.
I love it. She's really inverting the
she did.
class
she was
stereotype there, wasn't she?
It was pretty controversial.
It was, right? We talked last week about her as a social warrior in a way, and I think that's a reflection of it, how it manifests in her time as sort of this kind of class, kind of a class analysis.
Absolutely.
All right, so within level 2, the kinds of things that you'd be doing would be teaching the child or helping the child learn to observe but not interrupt, right?
Yeah.
How to politely get someone's attention. So, for example, that says role play getting a person's attention. Look to see if the person is concentrating. Then give them a verbal or physical cue to let the person know you need attention. For example, you might tap them on the shoulder, or you might put your hand on their forearm, or you might say, excuse me. And then you're going to wait patiently, step 3, and then you're going to set some expectations for how long you should wait before you re-tap.
Go ahead and switch us back over. Yeah.
And then, here we go. And then you're going to, express gratitude when the person acknowledges you.
Yeah, so these are just basic steps, to getting someone's attention. It actually is a problem that adults have with children often.
Yes.
Is adults like to have adult conversation, and we don't like to be interrupted by our kids who are maybe grabbing our pants, or I remember one time like one of our kids pulled my pants almost down, like because they wanted my attention so bad. I'm like, or pulling your dress up, or right. So like these are actually things that human beings need to be taught how to do.
Yeah, and so that's what I wanted to emphasize here, is that it seems pretty straightforward, like wait your turn, but actually a child, and this is the magic of the Montessori approach, like the step-by-step lessons and the role play being specified to help the child understand that process, and then in time
and practice it.
Yeah, in time it'll just become like, oh, I need to wait my turn, right? It just becomes shorthanded into a piece of social grace. But as you're learning it, there is a process that
Right.
you have to internalize.
Right. And that lesson, I think it's also the key is that this lesson doesn't happen in the moment.
That's right.
You know, like you're
It's too late.
yeah, you're on the phone. I'm doing this. Like you're on the phone. You're on the phone with or on your Bluetooth, right? You're on the phone talking with somebody. Does it ever occur to you that when you have your earbuds in and you're just talking on the phone, that children might not like it might be like you're just talking to no one. We've kind of gotten used to that recently, but it must be really weird.
I think kids get it.
It must be weird.
I think they get it right away.
They probably do. Anyway, so you're on the phone or you're engaged in another conversation. Your kid is like, you know, it's getting louder and louder and louder. Mommy, 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 right? Yeah. And then you're like, and you don't even hear them at first because you don't hear the first few mommies. And then finally, by the time they get to the sixth or seventh mommy that's like deafeningly loud, accompanied with like pulling, finally you're able to divert your attention away from the person that you're chatting with. And then you look at your child and what happens?
You're angry.
Yeah, you're really mad.
What do you want?
You're like, what? Right,
this better be good.
That is an example of not a good time. Like that is, Maria tells us flat out, like, do not give a lesson at this time. You might be tempted to, you know, sit down and give your kid a talking to. That is not the way you interrupt. You know, I will talk to you after, or, you know, I was in the middle of a conversation. Like that is not the time to give a lesson, Maria Montessori says. We must give the lesson at a different time. And so, at that time, what's probably more important is that you control your anger, you tune into your kid, you give them your attention, you let them know that you're going to go back to your conversation now, that you go back to your conversation, and then the next day, you give this lesson.
That's right.
Like, or maybe that afternoon, you give this lesson. And you can even start it with, do you remember the other day when I was talking to my friend and you needed my attention? I noticed that you were really, really trying to get my attention. Do you remember that? And if they are around age 4 or 5, maybe not if they're 3 or 2, they might not be able to remember or verbalize it because young children really live in the moment.
Yep.
But older children might be able to have a conversation with you about this.
Yeah, it's a level 2.
They might be able to say, yeah, it was, you know, how did you feel when you were trying to get my attention? They were probably feeling really frantic and frustrated. And, you know, along with impatient, you know, I think that with young children, when they are interrupting us and trying to get us, get our attention, I think what we don't realize, because we're so frazzled and upset in the moment about how it's happening, is we don't realize that, when you're trying to talk to somebody and they're not giving you attention, it starts to make you scared.
Yeah.
In a way, like
right.
there's some fear involved on the child's part. And so what Montessori does for us is it allows us to see from the perspective of the child, have compassion for their point of view, and then teach a direct lesson on here is what to do.
Yep.
Now, after you give that lesson, is your child always going to do this?
For sure not.
No,
yeah.
for sure not.
But if you've established
we've checked it off, what's the problem?
Well, to err is human, to forgive divine, I think is it, right? Like, so you've got to practice again, because even adults, like,
that's it. Yeah.
Even adults will. So I was thinking, you know, let's going back to our opening segment about the advisory, the preparing the child beforehand is a way to reduce your stress, because you will have, and the child will have a language, a process, something to fall onto, and not feel so overwhelmed and embarrassed or on pins and needles. I know that as a parent, I'll sometimes feel, not so much anymore now that the kids are older, but when they were little especially, and we were in a place where you were supposed to be quiet, or, you know, a museum or something like that, it could be very stressful. Like I could just not enjoy it because I'm just worried about.
Yeah, even a library, which is supposed to be kid-friendly.
Yeah, or if they're playing with other kids and, you know, like, are they going to get hurt? Are they going to hurt somebody? Are they going to do something? You know, it can be very, very stressful. So I think having these lessons and teaching this concept of grace and courtesy through the practical life is a way is a way to sort of help. Now the other side to that is that I think is also implied here, not implied, but it actually said is it also requires the others in society to also respect what's happening. So we have to have this. It's not just on you, the parent or the child. The other people in that situation also have to be mindful that a child, as an adult, makes mistakes, and not to become overly impatient or rude or exclusory to families or to those who have children, and their children can get kind of annoying sometimes. It just happens. So I think these are great lessons in terms of dealing with that stress. Okay.
Yes. Should we talk about the arts very briefly?
Very briefly.
So on this one, because I know you have a joke. Somebody has a joke for us.
Somebody's got a joke.
So what I picked was actually a level 1 sculpture card, and this only has 3 activities on it, which is more than enough for me to want to think about it at a time. It has flattening Play-Doh, cookie cutting Play-Doh, and rolling a Play-Doh snake. And what I love about these 3 activities, you can find them in the Arts Foundational Lessons, is that they all are art activities, but they're also practical life activities. You know, so when you think about the flattening Play-Doh, what does that do? It's about body strength and developing those muscles, like so it's about gross motor muscle development. It also has practical applications because in real life we do need to flatten things sometimes. Trying to think of an example of when that is true, but I know it comes up. Can you think of an example? I'll let you think about that. Cookie cutting Play-Doh using scissors. Cookie cutting.
This is when you
so
push
using
the...
a cookie cutter, I mean, it's going to come in handy with baking.
But it's also about the... Go ahead. Yeah.
It's also about the senses.
Yeah.
Is that what you're going to say?
No, I was going to say it's about the fine motor and the hand-eye coordination.
That too, that too. Visual discrimination.
Which is a step in the reading process.
Yes, it is. It is. Rolling a Play-Doh snake is very sensory. You know, so we're really kind of dabbling in and out of the other lessons when we just teach one lesson. Yeah,
you know, I didn't come up with an example other than like in baking or something where you might flatten, but I suspect that the motions that you make when you're rolling the snake or flattening is just about strengthening sensitivity to the hand, and that covers everything. You're so much, right? Like being able to grasp things and hold them with strength, but not too much strength. And
like I really feel like it's a basic skill that we use, like our power to push things into place. You know, maybe you're flattening the carpet in one area of your room,
or if you're like me, you're having to rely more and more on your pushing to get out of the chair because.
All right, we're going to stop there. That's great. So, who's here?
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Rabbit.
Well, hey, Rabbit, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I brought some fun jokes. I hope you like them.
Okay.
Are you ready for a joke?
I'm ready. Let's hear some jokes.
Okay. All right. Now, this is a really good one. I want you to really think hard about this.
Of course.
Okay. What farm animal keeps the best time?
What farm animal keeps the best time? All right, well, I'm thinking of pigs and chickens and horses and cows and
Do you give up?
Yeah, I give up.
It's a watchdog.
Oh!
Whoa, 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 whoa.
I did not guess it watchdog.
Well, that's because you're not the joke master. All right, I've got another one, though.
More?
Oh, I do. This is a 2-joke day because that's the kind of day it is.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. What do you call a horse that lives next door?
What do you call a horse that lives next door?
That's right.
Is it on a farm? A horse that lives next door. A horse could be called a mare, or there could be a foal, or a stallion.
No.
I give up.
It's a neighbor.
Neighbor. Thank you for those
You're
jokes,
welcome.
Rabbit.
Boink, 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 boink. Well, I hope you enjoy those rabbit jokes as much as I did listening to them. If you'd like to know more about how we come up with these brilliant rabbit jokes, you should join us on chat over on our website at childoftheredwoods.com. There's actually no information about jokes there, but in some abstract way, you will be supporting the joke creation. We actually have a new free trial that we've rolled out, and we're getting a lot of great responses on there. So you can get a sample. Right now, it's Bounty, and in October, it's going to be Cave.
Yes.
But if you join right now, you get a 7-day free trial to our Theme of the Month plan. That includes Bounty, our annual portfolio. We have our office hours tomorrow.
Yeah,
so
our
if you
office
join
hours.
if you join the free trial today, you can join us for that office hours tomorrow.
Yep.
And then you have 7 days to try it out. And if you love it, you can stick. And if you don't, then you can leave. And if you love it but you want more, then you can upgrade and all that good stuff too.
Yep.
We are also ongoing with our lower elementary coaching. We're at kind of toward the end of the primary coaching, but it's never
We're
too
in the
late.
middle of the primary coaching.
Yeah, so if you were interested in that lower elementary curriculum specifically, we're going to do physical science in October.
Yep.
So it's just the beginning of the academic subject areas, and you can get that in the unlimited plan.
Yep, we're also about to roll out brand new planning cards and new foundational content for the lower elementary curriculum, and that is super, super exciting. It's happening right now.
All right. Well, we're getting.
Okay.
Oh, we had a good question.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for getting our Tuesday off to a great
Some
start.
comments?
You're welcome. And then also, I need to know where to get the rabbit to come to our lessons. He is available for personal appearances on demand. I think, yes, you are definitely one of our members, so perhaps he might make a special appearance in the community.
Could be.
If this is something we would like. Okay, we have one more segment for the day, and that is we're going to talk about a book.
We are going to talk about a book. Reading to and with your child is an essential part of homeschooling. If you are calling yourself a homeschooler like we are, literature actually brings to life all of the emotions and the experiences of others in the world. This helps your child. Hold on, I'm not available to answer a phone call right now. This helps your child to gain an understanding of the perspective of other people, because obviously we can give our children a lot of experiences in their local culture, but it is impossible to give them, to have them literally step into the shoes of another person to experience what it's like in another culture or having a different personal identity. But we can do that through literature. And so every one of our thematic units has a list of books that are not the only books that you should be reading with your child, but they are great books that you can use to kind of jumpstart your study.
Yeah, there's always at least 10 books, and then 4 of those books are highlighted throughout each of the weeks.
Yes.
Now, this book is not the book that's highlighted for this week, but
it is a great book.
It's a great book, and it's on our list. So if you are in our community and you have not picked this one up yet, you should. It is so good.
It is so good. It is exactly the kind of book that is well aligned to the Montessori approach to teaching. It's going to lead you to have big, juicy conversations with your child about all kinds of things, and it'll encourage your child to ask questions. It'll give them the experience of from a point of view that maybe they have never experienced, or maybe it is the point of view that is super resonant, for your culture. This one is just perfect, I think, if you are exploring all of the bounty of autumn. It's by Grace Lynn, The Ugly Vegetables.
It's called The Ugly Vegetables.
So this is not a new book.
No, I think this is from the 90s.
It is an older book. I'm going to find out right now where it is written. I think it was the 90s. Let's see, 1999 is when this book was published. And it is dedicated to Grace's mom. It says, it's for my mom and her ugly gardens. So it is a story.
Let's show that at the top. Let's
show what at the top?
Yeah.
Oh, you want to
yeah, she has
do a top down?
Yeah, because she has that picture at the end.
Okay, sure.
In fact, if you go to the author's website, she has all kinds of fun pictures and photos and conceptual sketches. You can buy a copy of the book. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and skip to the end here. She is here with her mother. So it's a beautiful book. Go ahead.
It is. So here's Grace. Here's, I assume this is her mama, the mama of the ugly vegetable garden. That just made my heart swell with happiness. It says Graceland is the author and illustrator of more than a dozen picture books and novels, so she is pretty prolific. Other titles that she has written include Bringing in the New Year and The Year of the Rat. Her first published book, The Ugly Vegetables, remains one of her all-time favorites, and I could see why when I read it, because it is an endearing story. And we're not going to read the whole book right now to you on YouTube, but we will be coming back in to read this story to our community members.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so hang out. If you have this, you can find this book at your local public library and you're in our community, that's great. Or if you have purchased it, that's great. And if you have not, we'll be coming in to share it with you in a top-down
If you want your own
view.
copy, go to her website and support the author.
Oh, so it's so lovely. So it really brings to life the experience of an Asian American whose parents have real cultural ties to the bounty of their own childhood and their own upbringing or their own ancestry. And it is the thing that is so interesting right off is that you can see that this little girl is excited about starting her garden. Like, who wouldn't be? But then she notices all of the gardens of the neighbors around her, and she notices that like everybody is planting a garden, but she notices that like the seeds of the neighbors all seem to be the seeds of flowers. But her mother has a different idea. Her mom is writing, and she calls them, my mother drew funny pictures on pieces of paper. And when you look at the illustration, you can see that they look like Chinese characters.
They are, yeah.
They are Chinese characters
right.
that I can't read. And apparently the child can't read maybe yet either. And she's kind of confused. Why are we putting these little funny pieces of paper rather instead of the traditional
pictures of the flowers?
And her mom says, because we are going to do something different than our neighbors are doing. We are growing Chinese vegetables specifically. Well, is the little girl happy about that?
No, she was like, what's going on?
She's kind of confused.
Yeah.
And she's excited to see that the garden is growing, but look
at
what
everybody
happens.
else.
Everyone else has beautiful flowers, and yet here's her mama in this very strange-looking garden with, I don't know if you can see that, but it's a little rabbit.
What? What? Not you.
Rabbit does make another appearance, and the child is happy, but she's just kind of confused. Like, everyone else is growing flowers, but our garden is full of these giant leaves. It's kind of strange. In fact, it looks kind of ugly. And her mother is very kind about it when her daughter is upset. And she's like, no, you're going to see, you're going to love it. We've actually got the best garden ever. It's going to be an amazing garden. And sure enough, when harvest season comes, they harvest these very strange looking vegetables. And if, maybe you have had this experience. I told David, I said, we actually have an Asian market that's very, very close to our house.
Several, actually. Yeah.
We actually have several. We live in a community that is very Asian heavy, and not just Chinese, but very heavy Asian culture. And there are vegetables that I do not recognize out on the street next to my pottery studio, and I'm always so curious. And I was telling him, like, I'm always so tempted to buy them, but also a little nervous about it because I don't know how to prepare them or what they're used for, whether they're sour or sweet. And what this book does that's so sweet, I'll kind of shortcut you towards the end. You know, the end is like ends with a big beautiful bowl of soup, lots of gratitude for these ugly vegetables. And then at the very end, you get a recipe, like the whole neighborhood gets to share. It's like a story about community love.
They brought their flowers, and she brought her soup.
It's a real feel-good story. Like, I adore this book. She says it was the best dinner ever. Flowers and ugly vegetables together, right? It's such a good message for children. And then in the end, there's actually a recipe for the soup.
Yeah.
And so here it is, and I initially looked at all of these vegetables that are named in the soup, and I do not speak any Chinese languages. So I was like, I don't want to mangle them when I read them out loud, but it actually is helpful to those of us who do not speak.
Yeah, because it provides it in the traditional Chinese script, and then in both
You've got the characters
kind of
here, a picture of the vegetables. I was actually really excited. I was like, oh, I'm going to take this with me to the market and see if I can find some of these delicious ugly vegetables. And then it also gives you some pronunciation.
Yeah, both in the kind of in an English phonetic style, and then in
and a little definition of what to expect. And so this says, this is Kong Xing Zai. It looks like some leaves. It says this literally means hollow heart vegetable. The stem is hollow like a tube. Interesting. And so I'm going to take that information and do a little research online and see if I can figure out how to purchase these at my local Asian market. And I love that this is a very simple recipe. It's just basically, it's like
chicken broth.
It's a chicken soup with
lots of these green vegetables.
Lots of these vegetables. I bet it does smell amazing. So anyway, very, very fun and a perfect kind of example of the kind of books that you can find in the literature sections of our thematic packs.
I think a really appropriate book for the times we live in, about the beauty of our world and our food and all the contributions of all the various people on the earth.
Absolutely.
To our society. Just a great way, when you think about what is the Montessori method about, it's about like kind of saying we all are God's creation. We're all here together. We're all together and can make our world better.
Yeah, it's an example of, it's kind of an example of like making peace, with the neighbors, even though you have different cultural perspectives and backgrounds. It really shows like how people can come together if they choose to appreciate each other's cultures in just a very loving and genuine way. And maybe this does not represent the experience of all Chinese Americans, obviously, but it is one person's perspective.
Yeah, it's a real story about her real life.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, I think they call that like own story. Yeah. I think it's just beautiful. So check out that book.
Check it out. Totally Ever After says she's always grateful for these book lists.
Good.
They're not the kind of books I normally sign out, and they add a variety to our reading. Her child actually really enjoyed it.
Aww,
it's wonderful.
Love it.
Well, these books are great, and a cornerstone to any good homeschooling or any education is literature. So enjoy that. All right. Well, I like today's episode. We talked about the Surgeon General. We ended on a really beautiful book about our planet and the food and our culture and all that sort of good stuff.
I think we can send them on a mission to try to be less stressed about education.
Make yourself a beautiful pot of soup. Maybe enjoy that with some friends or community, and you will feel better.
Yes, you will feel better.
You will feel better. Okay. If you would like to know more about our work, we invite you to join us over at childoftheredwoods.com. where you can find out about our programs, including that free trial we've got going right now. And you can check that out. If you have any questions, you can email us at hello@childoftheredwoods.com. You can also reach us via our chat feature, which we try to monitor pretty often. And so you send a chat. If you don't hear something back, send us an email, but we'll try and get to your message right away. And that way we're happy to answer any of your questions.
Yes. All right. Take care, friends. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.
See you next week.